I keep using the word quaint, but that's exactly what it is. It's an adorable little town on the river with 2 beautiful colleges, farmers markets, a couple of breweries, and an independent bookstore. There's just so much personality. And on top of all of it, it's only 45 minutes away from Minneapolis, and it's super affordable. So it's just this all-around wonderful place, and it really has it all.
Hey, this is Cindy Scott from Cinder's Travels. Welcome to Locals Know Best podcast. This is episode 24. Locals Know Best is a bi-weekly podcast where my guests share the places and outdoor travel adventures they love most right in their own backyards. Topics range from unique lodging options, treasured outdoor activities, favorite dining spots, and a breakdown of whether the insta-famous and possibly overrated spots in town are even worth checking out. Today, I'll be speaking with Kristen Glazer about how to make the most of a day outdoors in Northfield, Minnesota. Kristen is a Minnesota-based travel writer. She is also the founder of Expedition Kristen, a website that is chock full of thoughtful itineraries to help readers plan their next day trip or overnight stay while in Minnesota. She started the site as a way to share her passion for the state and inspire readers to travel to and appreciate some of the state's best hidden gems. Kristen lives a very active lifestyle and is constantly exploring the great outdoors via hiking, biking, kayaking, skiing, cross-country skiing, boating, and snowboarding. She also has a Master's of Science in Marketing, along with 10-plus years of marketing communications experience. Currently, she lives in the Twin Cities with her husband, Nick, and her giant Newfoundland, Oli. If you want to follow along with links to all the places we'll be talking about and a map of the area, this episode's show notes can be found at localsknowbestpodcast.com/24. As always, thanks so much for listening. Let's get into the episode. Hi, Kristen. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about where we're going to be exploring today.
So today we're going to talk about Northfield, Minnesota, which is a very special town to me. It's really a cute, quaint little river town, about 45 minutes south of Minneapolis. And I actually spent 3 years living there, so it is near and dear to my heart.
So are you originally from Minnesota?
No, I actually born and raised on Long Island. So I grew up there, and so I landed here because when I was in college, I studied abroad in Spain. And while in Spain, I met my now husband, who is from Minnesota. So about 3 years after that semester ended, we started dating long distance from Minnesota to New York. And then I eventually moved here, and it's hard to believe, but that was actually 10 years ago.
Wow. So you guys probably had to choose between the two. What drew you guys to Minnesota instead of New York?
So I will say I did kind of figure in the beginning, he was here in grad school, so he couldn't leave. And I thought, okay, we'll give it a shot, see if there's something there. And if the relationship works out, we'll head back to New York. But there's a reason that I've stayed. And of course, I like to tease him that it's about how great Minnesota is, but obviously for him too. But one of the big reasons that I've stayed here is Minnesota as a whole, but also very specifically Northfield, it's super affordable. Plus, I love being outside. I love the amount of outdoor parks here. We do a ton of hiking. We have kayaks, and I do cross-country skiing and snowboarding, and it's just really wonderful. Of course, I love New York, but it's expensive. So we could actually afford a house here pretty early on, and that was definitely a big draw for us when we were very young.
That totally makes sense. I'm really glad you brought up all of the outdoor adventures you like to participate in, because I've mentioned on this podcast a time or two before that I lived in New York for a year, and I love the outdoors. I lived in Queens, so I don't know if that's similar to where you're from.
Oh, me too. I was in Astoria.
Oh, I was in Astoria. Crazy.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the hardest parts about living there for me, I grew up in Michigan, so kind of similar to Minnesota. Similar in like an outdoorsy way. I know Minnesota's colder. I'm not saying, but I found it hard to get to outdoor stuff there. It was all very far away or overcrowded. How did you feel it was different in Minnesota compared to New York, going to outdoorsy places?
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. It's so hard to get out of the city. You have to go, in New York, you have to go so far. a lot of young people don't have cars in New York City. Parking is very expensive and crowded. So, usually take the subway. So I actually would end up going back to my parents' house on Long Island a lot just to kind of get out of that congestion and going to the beaches by them. But yeah, that was definitely something I struggled with. I always thought that it would be really amazing to live and work in New York City and be a young working woman. And I quickly found that it just wasn't exactly right for me. And although I liked working in that exciting energy, I really need to get out of it when I'm done with work. And I really need to be in some quiet and some nature on the weekends and evenings. So the balance wasn't quite right for me in New York. So I love how easy it is to be in the Twin Cities, have access to amazing culture, restaurants, museums, and then you can so easily get outside of that and be in nature.
Yeah, I can so connect with what you're saying, and I bet a lot of people listening can too. Is Northfield the kind of city that is popular to people in Minnesota, or is it kind of a hidden gem in general?
If you're from Minnesota, you definitely know Northfield, especially because there's 2 huge colleges there. But I think that, being a New Yorker, I definitely didn't know all of the wonderful things that Minnesota had before I moved here. And I'm always learning. This past summer was actually my first time up to the North Shore, and we went as far north as Grand Marais. So I've been here for 10 years, and I'm still discovering wonderful places here.
Well, you've been in Minnesota for over 10 years, definitely an expert by now. What in that time drew you to make a blog devoted to Minnesota?
Yeah, great question. So I love to travel. I love to be outside and be active, and it's what I do naturally. So I started this blog, expeditionkristen.com, to just really share my love for Minnesota. It's heavily focused on outdoor things that you can do in Minnesota. So it's tons of hiking resources, places to go kayaking, cross-country skiing, state parks. I do mix in some of those small town things like Northfield that we're going to talk about, and, checking out cool breweries is kind of a thing that we do a lot, and also different state parks. So it's a way for me to share my love of Minnesota and to help other people find some of the hidden gems that this, I think, very underrated state has to offer.
Yay. Well, I'm so excited because this podcast is about outdoorsy activities and hidden gems. And so this is going to be perfect. Okay. So Northfield, out of all the cities you could have picked to talk with us about today in Minnesota, what led you to pick that city?
A few reasons. Northfield is a really special town. Just to start off, I want to brag about Northfield for a minute here because they've won a lot of awards. So they've won number 2 for best small town in the country by livability. They've won number 1 best place for a well-rounded retirement by Money. And they've won top 50 most beautiful small towns in America by Country Living. And I think that really captures it. It's a very quaint, just adorable, sweet little town on a river, 2 great colleges, close by state park, super, super affordable. It's super great for young people. There's a lot of huge companies here, Target, Best Buy, General Mills, 3M, some of which we've actually both worked for. So there's a reason why it's won so many awards, and there's a reason why we lived there, because it is really just a wonderful town. It's a great place.
Awesome. Okay, well, is there a worst or best time to live in Northfield? I would imagine winter is possibly a little rough.
Yeah, you're spot on. I think anywhere in Minnesota, January and February is pretty brutal. We've definitely had those days of -40 with wind chill, and it can get pretty rough. But I will say I love that Minnesotans just completely embrace winter, and that's how you get through it. People go ice fishing and hunting, and cross-country skiing is really popular, and they'll have tons of different festivals on the frozen lakes, ice hockey, golf events on frozen lakes, kite festivals.
Whoa, kite festivals.
Yeah, I've been to some. It's so cool. So it's like if you just have the right clothing and the right attitude, it's fine. Would I invite you here in January? Probably not the greatest month for you to come. But for us who live here, we definitely find ways to get through it.
I love that, though. If you just have the right clothing and attitude, both super important.
Yeah. And then for the best season, so I guess it's a good thing that I would actually say probably both summer and fall for different reasons. I think fall, in most places, fall is just wonderful. It's cool weather, beautiful changing colors for the leaves. There's some amazing hikes with bluffs that overlook the Mississippi River, and the North Shore of Minnesota by Lake Superior is like breathtaking sea of gold in the fall time. And then in the summer, Minnesota is the land of 10,000 lakes. So we've got some kayaks. We're lucky enough to have some friends with lake houses and pontoons, and people love to go fishing. So those two seasons are like when Minnesota's really coming alive.
Oh, you're making me miss Michigan. So we're going to go into your perfect day in Northfield now. What season are we doing this hypothetical day in? Because it sounds like we have some options.
Yes, you definitely have some options. I would say late summer or early fall is really, really nice. I know I said earlier that summer is amazing, but that's, if you're on the lake, because it can get pretty hot and humid. So because we're focusing on some outdoor activities and hiking, I would say late August, September, October is going to be pretty wonderful.
Okay, great. So we are going to be your best friend coming to town to visit you, and just walk us through a perfect day in Northfield. Where are we waking up?
So normally I would recommend that you stay at the Archer House, which is on Division Street, which is basically the main street that runs through Northfield. It's a beautiful historic building with a large wraparound porch and a lot of character. That is actually where I've had some friends and family stay when they were visiting us when we lived in Northfield. But very sadly, they went through a fire a few months ago. I saw it when I was there a few weeks ago, and it was really sad to see because the building just is basically collapsed, like all the floors kind of collapsed down on each other. So they do, their website says that they do hope and plan to reopen, but it's pretty evident that it will take a while. So if you come when that's reopened, I would highly recommend it because it is very unique. And I always like to stay somewhere unique with more personality and character than like a regular, chain hotel. But my second option is a place called the Contented Cottage Bed and Breakfast. So this place I have not stayed at, but being that it's my backup plan, I'm choosing it because it has a lot of really fabulous reviews. It's a really cute little house in a neighborhood, and it's actually right next to the St. Olaf College campus. And initially I would recommend the Archer House because that way you can walk to everything. The bed and breakfast is still walkable if you're feeling energetic, but it's just not as close. So you can certainly walk into town, but if you're going to spend your day walking the whole day, you might want to have your car there so that at the end of the day, you can just easily drive back to the bed and breakfast.
So advisable to have a car for this day to kind of get around.
Yeah, a little bit easier.
Got it. So we're waking up there, and then our first meal, breakfast. Is there a really great coffee shop or breakfast place in town?
Yeah, there's for such a small little town, there's actually a lot of options for coffee and bakeries and all that kind of stuff. My first choice, though, is this place called Tandem Bagels. And the reason is because of their bagels. So I do have to admit, being a New Yorker, I am a little bit of a bagel snob. And Tandem Bagels is amazing. Easily, they have the best bagels anywhere in Minnesota that I have come across. So I'm an everything bagel kind of girl, and it's like they do it right. So that is where I would suggest you head for great bagels. They also have coffee and other types of breakfast foods there.
Okay, that sounds great. And then what are we going to go do first?
So the first thing I would recommend you do is check out either one of the two colleges there. So there's St. Olaf College or Carleton College.
And they're like a mile apart, so they have their own rivalry. But if you're just coming to enjoy the town, they're equally beautiful, I would say. They both just have incredible buildings and architecture, rolling hills, and depending on the season, different trees are in bloom.
They're open to the public. Anybody can just drive in and walk in. So I would highly suggest that you do that. Walk around the campus. There's really lovely winding paths. And then specifically at Carleton College, there is an arboretum that is open to the public, and it's 880 acres.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's a mixture of prairie land, tall grasses, and more open. And then other sections of it are more dense with trees and forest. There's a river or creek that winds through a section of it. And then also just tons of wildflowers, lots of beautiful trees and lots of oranges and yellows in the fall time here. So it will change throughout. And I think that's probably what makes it so cool, is that it's the further in you move around, the more it will change. Then you can walk there, you can bring your bikes, bring your dog or kids, and it's free for everybody.
Yeah, and 880 acres. It's huge.
Yeah, it's massive.
Awesome. All right. How long do you think we've spent doing that? You think we've spent like a couple hours there?
I mean, it is massive, right? So it's really up to the user, how long they want to experience it. So I would say an hour maybe is adequate. And St. Olaf College is not far away. It would just be like a 5-minute drive. So if you did both of those, I'd give yourself about an hour and a half.
Okay, perfect. So where are we going to go next? Is lunch next?
Yeah, so one of our go-to spots is called Froggy Bottoms River Pub. So it is right on the Cannon River. So you're heading back in town. It's a big place, and out back they have a huge patio. So we try to get out on that patio whenever we can. And there's always space because it is big. So back there, you'll almost always, I think every time we've been, we've seen people out there fishing in the Cannon River. So it's just kind of a cool experience to be that close to the river and to see people out there. They've definitely have caught fish while we've been out there having our lunch.
Aw.
Yeah. And, they've got great burgers and really great beer, and it's super, super affordable.
I love a good burger spot. That sounds great.
Yes, they're real good.
And so what's our next activity post burgers?
So from there, I would suggest you drive to the Nerstrand State Park. It's not far, about a 15-minute drive. And, it's a state park. So I think that is always worth it. Any kind of state or national park is usually going to be pretty fantastic. This specific one is kind of like rolling hills. So it's not like a steep hike or anything. It's more like a walk in the woods. It's pretty big, though, so I would say give yourself at least an hour. There's a couple of different trails you can take so you can determine the length of time that you want to be in there. But one of the things that I love about it is that right when you start, there's actually a waterfall right there. So if you didn't want to go real far, you can still basically see the best part of it right away at the entrance after just walking a few minutes. So it's kind of nice because you don't have to work that hard to see something really beautiful. And a lot of people will stop right there for, pictures or picnics. So if you just wanted a shorter walk or just a picnic, you can have a picnic there and head out if that's all you're looking for. Or you could really spend a couple hours in there.
Okay. Do you have any favorite hikes in there, or is the waterfall kind of the main attraction?
The waterfall is definitely the hot spot that everybody wants to see. But I would highly suggest you keep going because, one of the reasons that I love hiking so much is that feeling of being alone in nature. And the waterfall can get pretty crowded, so keep going because I think once you get further in, the trees start to get huge and the crowd disperses, which I love. So it's quiet. It turns into pretty dense wood. And there's a path that winds through all of these trees, and it's like a natural dirt trail, so it's not paved or anything. Lots of birds, particularly, in the fall time when everything is gold and yellow. I mean, the changing colors here is pretty spectacular, and that's one of the reasons why I suggested this park, because it is so dense with trees that it really is beautiful in the fall time. And I mean, it's beautiful in a different way from the waterfall. So yeah, if you have the time, keep going because I think it just gets better.
Okay, great. I wanted to ask you what your favorite Instagram spots are. Is this park recommended? Are there any others in town that you really like?
Yeah, I think the waterfall is definitely a hot spot. So that definitely get some pictures there because it's a really beautiful area. And then the other spot I would say, I think the college campuses are the buildings and the architecture there are really gorgeous. So we've been there to just take some photos and just walk around as a family. So I think those are two of the most picturesque areas in Northfield.
Okay, and let's say we want to switch it up from hiking and maybe do something else. Is there anything else you would recommend for our afternoon?
Yeah, there's a few other things I would recommend, especially if it's in the summer or the fall time. There is a great lake really nearby. It's called Circle Lake, and anyone can go there. There is a public boat launching area and a public parking lot. So a lot of people will go kayaking, boating. I've been kayaking there a bunch of times. There's a lot of really, really great fish in that lake. So you'll see tons of fishing boats out there in the summer. And then in the wintertime, there's a lot of ice fishing houses. So that's a really nice lake. And then there's also the Cannon River, and that runs through Northfield. And there is one part of it that is not where you would want to kayak because is just too dangerous. But there's a section of it that's really calm and relaxing, and it meanders through from Northfield down to the next town of Faribault. And it goes through marshes and farmland, and it's just a really calm, narrow little river with trees and farm on either side. And that's a really beautiful spot as well.
Okay, awesome. So we've spent the afternoon either hiking or out in the water. Now I'm guessing we're getting near the end of our day. We're going to start winding down. What should we do with the end of our day?
Yeah, so our favorite brewery is called Imminent Brewery, and it's right on Division Street, so you're heading back in town. And it's a really cool brewery. When we lived in Northfield, we would go like almost every weekend. It was just kind of like our go-to spot to, try a flight, see what their new seasonal beer was, and dogs are welcome. So we've brought our dog there before. And one of the things that I really like is that they kind of have like their staple of great beer. It's a great variety. And then they'll have some seasonal ones, and they'll partner with local farmers to create new types of beer. So specifically, there's a blueberry farm that I've been to before, and it's family owned, really cute. I was actually there one time for a yoga event in the blueberry fields. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, cool.
And the brewery used blueberries from this family farm to create a blueberry beer. So I just love that they're a small business and they're supporting other small businesses in their community.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it sounds like they have like a big outdoor, pretty place to be as well.
Yeah, they have a huge patio. And then I think the building actually used to be a firehouse. So they have those like massive firehouse doors that they'll open up. So the inside space kind of flows with the air, and they'll have live music and food trucks. And so, yeah, you can sit outside on the big open patio space, or you can be inside, which in the beautiful weather, when they open it up, it still feels like you're getting some fresh air.
It's just incredible what they do with breweries these days.
Yeah.
Those are some of our favorite places to check out on the road. I don't even drink beer, really, but my husband does, and I just love seeing them. And what you're talking about, too, sounds really great that they work with the local community. I love seeing that.
Yeah, they also work with the local yoga studio there. And when I lived there, I went to this yoga studio often. And, they'll have like a Saturday morning yoga and a pint type of event, and I think you pay like $10 or something for a yoga class and a beer. So
what? That's hilarious. That seems counterintuitive. You're just having a day. I mean, I guess they kind of balance each other out, right?
It's I think that's more focused on mental health, right, than physical.
Yeah. Oh man, I've never heard of that before. That sounds fun.
That's actually like super popular in Minnesota.
Really?
A lot of breweries and yoga studios do that type of thing.
Man, I'm probably just not in the know, but that sounds fun. I need to find one of those. Okay, well, what about after Eminent? Where are we going to be heading for dinner?
So for dinner, I have a few options. I think that's one of the nice and surprising things about Northfield is that being that it is a small town, it still has
a ton of great options. So the first one is called the Contented Cow, and you actually go down the stairs and down into this sort of dark and small little bar. They often have live music. They have really great burgers, and the bison burgers actually come from a bison farm about 10 minutes away. So very, very, very local.
Yeah.
Very local food. Really great beer selection. And then they also have a back patio that faces the Cannon River. And Froggy's is actually right across the river, facing the Contented Cow. So they're right there across from each other. Another place that I really love is called Chapati, and that's an Indian restaurant that's right on Division Street, right next to the Contented Cow, and really excellent Indian food, just high quality ingredients, large portions. So I just think that's a great option and maybe surprising to find in a small town.
Yeah.
And then the last one I would suggest, depending on what you enjoy or what you prefer, is Tanzenwald Brewery. And this one is actually probably just a couple blocks away from the bed and breakfast. So that one you could actually walk to very easily. And it's different from Imminent because Tanzenwald has a full kitchen. So they have a whole menu on, tacos, burgers, sandwiches, and it's really, really good food. And this might be setting the bar a little bit high, but my husband said it was the best burger he had in Minnesota. And I feel like he knows burgers pretty well. So,
Whoa. Better than the other places with the burgers?
Oh, I don't know. That's tough. At Contented Cow, I love the bison burgers. So I think at Tanzenwald, I would just get the regular beef with their French fries. And I did also just recently have pulled pork tacos there. And they were like ridiculously delicious with a nice cold beer. That was on a hot day after our hike. So that really hit the spot.
Oh, man. Now I love burger recommendations in the first place. And now there's 3 in this episode. So I definitely have to go check out Northfield.
Yep. Clearly, I'm drawn to burgers and beer and hiking. That's pretty much my jam.
Yeah, I think you and most Minnesotans, most Midwesterners, myself included. That's why I want a burger. Okay. Well, it seems like we've wrapped up our day. I want to ask you about one event that you told me about prior to starting the recording, the Jesse James Day. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So this is a cool event that happens every year in September now, and it's called the Defeat of Jesse James Day. And what it's in reference to was back in 1876, Jesse James and his gang, I think it was about 8 men total, rode into town on horseback and tried to rob the First National Bank there, right in town, which is still there, right on Division Street. They had guns, they went inside, and it was a holdup and everything. And it's a day of celebration for the people from Northfield who lost their lives actually doing the right thing that day. They wouldn't open up the vault of money there, so they were not able to steal the money. And a couple of local people in the street had their own guns and took down some of the robbers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Jesse James did escape on horseback. So he did get away, but it was his gang. I think he was kind of like the ringleader. So because it was an unsuccessful robbery, it's a celebration of the defeat of his attempted robbery and the money was not stolen.
Yeah, wow. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's such a crazy story. It's sad that obviously people lost their lives, but what a neat little piece of history for the town.
Yeah, so they do a reenactment right in town.
They do?
There's real horses, and it's actually like a huge, huge event that people come far and wide to Northfield to check out this event.
That's cool that they embrace it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then lastly, this episode has been focused on August, September, October, but I feel like we can't really wrap up a Minnesota episode without me asking if there are a few winter activities that you would recommend in the area.
Yeah, so there's a few options. If you're looking for downhill skiing and snowboarding, you would have to drive a bit. Buck Hill is about a half an hour away. Afton Alps is maybe an hour to an hour and a half away. But if you're looking for snowshoeing, you can go to Nerstrand State Park and can actually snowshoe and go through with a snowmobile. For cross-country skiing, I really like to go on frozen lakes because it's really quiet and private. And I go a lot with my dog. He's a 100-pound Newfoundland. And it's nice to be somewhere where there's no trails because he always loves to, greet other people and other dogs. And if I'm on skis, then he knocks me over. So I like big frozen lakes because then there's plenty of space.
That seems like that takes talent, cross-country skiing with your dog.
We've gotten better. I got the leash that goes around my waist, and he stays right next to me. And he's just so funny because he's almost 3, but he still kind of bounds around the way that a puppy does sometimes, but he's 100 pounds. So usually I let him get out on the lake and just kind of like run around and get his excitement out. And then once we get started, he's really good, and he's gotten used to just keeping up with me. He stays right behind my legs on my right side, and he just treks along with me. So it's really cute.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
We have a corgi here. I don't know if I could train him to do that. He's pretty fast though.
Yeah, it took some time. I got knocked over a few times, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so that's really fun. And there is a place in Northfield where you can rent. They're called the Gear Resource Outfitter, and they're right in, technically it's Dundas, which is this little teeny town next to Northfield, but it's right on the border of the two towns, so you can rent equipment there.
Okay, great.
One other idea for a winter activity is the 2 colleges in town are very hilly campuses. So if you're there with kids or if you just want to have fun yourself, it's a really popular place to go sledding in the wintertime. And a lot of people go there to sled with kids or just for themselves to have fun. Nice.
And for overrated spots, does anything stand out to you as overrated in Northfield?
Nothing pops to mind. I think other than kind of the hot spots like the Nurse Trent State Park, Waterfall, and the college campuses. But I wouldn't say that they're overrated because I think that they are beautiful and that they deserve the hype that they get.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Well, let's wrap this up. If we're visiting Minnesota, why should we make sure a stop in Northfield is on our list?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. I keep using the word quaint, but that's exactly what it is. It's an adorable little town on the river with 2 beautiful colleges. In the summertime, there's farmers markets, which I love going to those. They have live music and a lot of local vendors selling baked goods and crafts and homemade woodwork and all kinds of really cool things. There's so many wonderful family-owned farms around town where you can pick blueberries or strawberries or pumpkins and apples. And there's a great yoga studio and a couple of breweries. I'm also a knitter, and there's a family-owned yarn store in town and an independent bookstore. There's just so much personality. And on top of all of it, it's only 45 minutes away from Minneapolis, and it's super affordable. And they actually have excellent public schools. So it's just this all-around wonderful place, and it really has it all.
Well, thanks for giving us a tour. This was great. I enjoyed talking with you today. I'm sure, as we said, many Minnesotans know Northfield, but I did not. And Northfield just sounds like one of those perfect small towns and just sounds like a really great place to go explore, especially in the fall. I personally think all of us in this country are always looking for towns like this to escape to, where we can just be outdoors in a beautiful area. So thanks so much for introducing me, at least, to Northfield and to yoga and beer. Thanks so much for tuning in. Once again, if you want to grab the show notes for this episode, head on over to localsnowbestpodcast.com/24. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love if you would leave a review in Apple Podcasts and let me know what your favorite part was. Make sure to check out the Instagram post for this episode over at Local Snow Best Podcast, and please feel free to share the episode with your favorite travel buddy. Thanks so much. Catch you next time on Local Snow Best.